All right, so the good news is we got 3 out of 4 of these working, and we will do the best we can to get the last one working after the next break. All right, so from where we are right here, if you look up on the screen, please, I want you to, again, we're going to make another folder in here. So right mouse click in here, do a new folder. This will be our public folder. All right. Now, I have worked on this. I worked on this a lot this weekend, and I played around with it a while. But just so you know, if you look up on the screen here, under Assets, there's your image and your favicon. See that? I tried moving them out of the Assets folder, and it appeared to work better with them in the Assets folder. Yeah, I had to change the paths and do a whole bunch of stuff when I did that, so we're just going to see at least if we can leave it there. So what we want to do, I'm going to do this not inside of Visual Studio Code because I hate moving directories around in Visual Studio Code. If you don't have a problem with it, then you do it in there. But I'm going to come in here, and in my blog, let me get all this garbage here out of the way, see exactly what I'm doing. All right, so in this blog folder, what I want to do is I want to grab all 3 of my HTML files, all 4 of them, I'm sorry, about, contact, index, and post. I want to grab those 4 files, and I want to copy them into my public folder, move them to my public folder. So I grabbed about.html, I grabbed contact.html, I grabbed index.html, and I grabbed post.html. And I moved them all into my public folder, because again, that's where I would want static things to go. Does that make sense? All right. Yeah. Okay, the other things that I want to move then is I want to come back up and look on the screen here. I want to take the JS folder, I want to take the CSS folder, and I want to take the assets folder, and I want to move those into public as well. The assets folder, the CSS folder, and the JS folder. I want to take those and not copy them. I want to move them into the public folder as well. You can already see, well, it says I've got something open, so I'll have to close that. So just a second. I'm trying to think of what file in there I have open. Oh, I know what it is. I actually have the app open, and that's why I think. Close that, and that should do it. And that should do it. There. Okay, now let's try it again. No. Oh, brother. It's telling me something. I got something open here. I don't want to skip it, though. All right, for some reason it's not letting me move that. I don't want to waste my time or your time, so what I'm going to do, instead of moving that, I'm going to copy it there. Okay? You don't have to do that. If yours moved in, that's good. And if yours didn't, then just copy it. But eventually, I think I'm just going to have to close everything, and when I open it up, it'll be fine. But what you should have then, inside of your public folder, is the assets folder. And if you look in here, again, the assets folder has your images. Those you will end up replacing. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. And your favicon. You can feel free to replace that as well if you find something you'd rather use as a favicon. This was just the built-in stuff. All right. And we've got our about, we've got our contact, we've got our index, and we've got our post. Now, whether you realize it or not, there's kind of a bad thing about this. And what do I mean? Well, when I look here, it's up and running. That's good. But notice what happens now when I go out to localhost colon 8888. All right? It is still up. Okay. Okay, well, that's good. It's still finding stuff. But that said, what we want to do is if we come in here and we start manually typing in stuff, it's going to be easy to break the program right now. So we're going to fix that right now. All right. So what I'd like you to do is to go into server.js, and we're going to make some changes to that file. There's my server.js. We're going to start to add some routes. All right. I do want to mention, I may have said this before, I may not have, but I want to make sure you hear this, and that is, even though that file right there, that blogdb doesn't exist, when we run the program, it tells the system to create the file. So it's going to create the database file for us. All right. So we're going to start creating our routes here. So start creating routes. Okay. And we'll have, well, 4 of them because we've got 4 things in here. app.get right. So in here we're going to do a res.send file. All right, and we'll do a path.resolve. And I'm going to put this in here, then I'm going to explain exactly what's happening. So if it doesn't make sense after I'm explaining it, please say something. All right, I'm going to put all 4 of these in, and then we're going to go back and look at all of them. All right, so we've got that one. We've got about. And that one will, of course, be about. Then we have posts. Sorry, that's single. It's post. And we have contact. All right, I'll give you a second to put that stuff in. Now, what we're saying right here is when you just put in a slash, we are telling it to use underscore dir name, and remember, we have said that means public folder, because that's what we set for that. So we're telling it to go in there and find index.html. When we do a slash about, we're telling it to find about.html. Path.resolve is another way that you can do this. Path has got literally scores of different methods that you can use to do this. Now, I could be wrong here. We're going to find out right now. I'm going to save. I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to refresh, and it should still work fine. Home, about, sample post, and contact. Okay, so it still works. We're setting up our route. That's the good news. Now, here's the bad news. We're going to break it right now. We're going to break it on purpose. Why are we going to break it? We're going to break it because what we want to do is we want to create a new folder here called views. And we already created a views folder. And we want to move these 4 files into views. All right? Now, you might say, well, why? What are we presenting to the user? We are presenting to the user the home page, which is index.html. We are presenting to the user the contact page for contact.html, the post page for post.html, and the about for about.html. All right? So we've already created the new views. We've already created the new views folder. So again, I'm doing it from here because I find it easier to do it from here. But I'm going to go into where we just put these files inside of our public folder. I'm going to grab these 4 files. So about, you want to keep your assets in there. You want to keep your CSS in there. You want to keep your JS in there. But these 4 files, I'm going to cut these. And then I'm going to go over to my views folder and I'm going to paste them in. So they're now in there. Now, we're not done yet though. I want you to go in and change, the extension on each one of these from .html to .ejs for all of these. If there's a way to do all 4 of them at once like this, I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to do them one at a time. And don't worry, it's going to look a little funky, and you'll get that thing that'll say, hey, do you want to change the extensions? Yes, you do. All right. Now, after doing this, now at least my guess is that's going to break. Notice why it's breaking. It says it can't find contact.html because there isn't one anymore. And if we clicked on the other things in there, we'd get similar errors. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. All right, so let's come in and go back into our server file, our server.js file. And we could comment these out, but I'm just going to make changes to these, period. Now, when you want to literally bring up one of these files, we're just going to tell it to render here. And it's just going to become much simpler because we're going to try to do here a res.render and then just the word index. No .html, just like this. And you only need 1 paren. Okay? Then we're going to do another res.render here. And that'll be for about. Again, with no .html, just about. All right. Then the same thing with post. Come on. And then finally with contact. All right. Save this. Come back over to here. And it says, cannot find module EJS. Somebody tell me why? Yeah, we didn't install it. So, let's go back into here. And I'm going to stop this. If your app may have crashed, that's totally fine. We're going to clear, and we're going to do an npm I EJS. npm I EJS. Okay, and we can then, well, before we even start this up, let's just put in this line here, and that is, we will put in at the top, const. Again, I didn't put in that line with NodeMod. It does a lot of screwy stuff. So const EJS equals require EJS. All right, so I just put in a new line 4 right here. And I'm saving. All right. And now I'm going to jump back in and restart the server and make sure I didn't break anything. looks like I didn't. All right. All right, and now I'm going to come back in here, refresh, and looky, well, at least one was back. All right, but, okay, and I know what the problem is. In fact, so should you. Look at the screen. What's the problem? Yeah, the problem is, okay, it is looking for the wrong file. And that's okay. We're going to fix all that right now. But before we do, I wanted to show you something. All right, and that is, and you don't have to bring these up, but I'm going to actually bring these up in another editor here. I want to bring up all 4 of these files that we put into views, and I just want to bring them up in it. You don't have to do this. I just want to show you something. Now, when you look here, you see this head section? All right. Now, when that's in the index, if we go here, guess what? It's the same head section, and it's the same head section, and it's the same head section. So rather than having it in there 4 times, let's just have it in there once. All right? So in order to do that, we're going to come in and under our views folder that we're in right here, we're in that views folder, I'm going to create another subfolder in there that I'm going to call layouts. All right? And in the layouts, I'm going to add 4 different files. All right? And, I mean, if you want to call them what I call them, that'll probably help you, but if you don't, that's up to you. So I'm going to put in first header, oops, not there, header.ejs, so we're going to put all the heading stuff in there. Well, since we got a header, you probably guessed already, we're going to have a footer, footer.ejs. All right, plus, this is the one we'll have to make changes to in just a minute. All right, we'll have a, not a folder, I'm sorry, come on. We will also go in and create navbar.ejs. All right, and then finally, we're going to create another one because they all have the same scripts at the bottom. And we're going to call it scripts.ejs. All right, so again, inside of the views folder, I created another folder called layouts. And in those folders, all right, or in that folder, I added those 4 files. Does the concept make sense to everybody? All right, so I'm going to worry right now about getting those set up. I'm not going to worry about copying any or removing anything, etc. I just want to get those set up right now. So I'm going to go back, and now that I've got those files, that's all good. So back in here, okay, in my views, in just a second, I want to put some stuff in there. But before I do, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm first, it doesn't matter which one of these you grab. I'm just going to grab the index because that's the main one. All right, and I'm going to grab basically everything that's in my head section right there. Does that make sense? I'm grabbing everything that's in the head section. And I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, and then I'm going to go and find my file that we just put in under layouts that's called header.ejs, and I'm going to paste that in. Now I've got a natural place for all my headers. Plus, if I want to change that, I only change it in one place. Now, it's even more than that. We're not going to get into this today, probably not even tomorrow, hopefully this week. You can put a variable in there so that I can have a different title for each page. To me, that would make sense to do that. You know, this one might say clean blog home. The next one might say clean blog about, etc. We're not going to worry about that right now. So we've got this. Our head is now done. So file, I'm going to save that. And for now, at least, I'm going to close that. Now, I'm going to go back into here again, into my index, and I'm going to find, there's my nav. Everybody see this? So I'm going to grab the entire nav section that's in here. All right, I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. Now I'm going to open up under my layouts the navbar.ejs, and I'm going to paste that in. So now I've got a natural place that's holding both of those. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, and I'm going to do another file save. And for now, at least, I'm going to close that navbar one. All right, then as I start looking through here, well, what else is there? All right, there's main content, there's a header. And let's see. Okay. Actually, I think I screwed up, but we'll fix it. That's not a problem. Let's go down to the bottom and find the footer, which is actually pretty big in here. Mine starts on line 112, and it goes all the way down to line 147. All right? So let's copy that. Then let's open up footer.ejs, and let's paste that in. So we now have our footer. Okay? Now, just mention to you, hey, you know this better than I do. Jeff screws up a lot. And see that header we put in? That won't be our head. Let's just grab everything, go back into that header.ejs and remove all that. All right? We're gonna change that. So go back into your index.ejs. This is the header we should have put in because this is the same every place. Page header. All right, at least I think. Wish I took better notes on my own stuff. Okay, go through and copy everything from the head to the head. You know what? I think we were right to begin with. Keep that in there. If we have to move it, we'll move it later. I actually think that is right. So put your head stuff in there. So we now have our header.ejs, we've got our navbar.ejs, we've got our footer.ejs. But if you go back and look here at the very bottom, there are some script files in there. See those? So let's grab these, not the body tag, but these from right here. Let's copy in those. Let's go over to scripts.ejs and paste that in. All right. Now, I want to quickly go in and look here. Let's look. So I'm going to go into the index, and I want to look at this header section and see what's in here. All right. It's got my fonts. Yeah, that looks good. I think this does change every time. So clean blog, etc. All right, so I'm going to go grab a different one. So I'm going to grab about and go into my header in there. Yeah, it says about me. That's different. They all have different images, except there's not enough in common right there for us to grab that and put it in one place. All right? Okay, so let's come in and start making some changes in here. We'll start with index.ejs. All right? Now, what I'm about to tell you, you already know. And what I mean is, we don't need this anymore. We're going to replace this in just a second. All right? When we get done, we're going to come down here and we're going to find our nav, and then we're going to come in and we're going to replace this. Then we're going to come in and we're going to find our footer, and we're going to replace that. And finally, we're going to come in and we're going to replace that. All I'm telling you is, right now, there's approximately 155 lines in here. When we get done, we're going to cut that down to about 40 lines. Why? Because we're cleaning it up. We're doing two good things here. We are preventing code bloat because we're taking code that is appearing in a bunch of places. We're only going to have it in one place. All right? And by doing that, we're also making our file sizes smaller so they'll load faster. All right? All right. So let's go back up to the top of index here. All right. We still want our doc type. We still want this. Those are all good. But now highlight this whole head section and cut it. Highlight that whole head section that's before your body and cut it. and we put in this. So let me put the whole thing in, then I'll explain to you everything that it is. All right, so it's the line right here, the blue line. So what we're saying is, we want you, when you get this code that's right here, we want you to instead go out to the layouts file, find a file that's called header.ejs, and replace its content right there. Does that make sense? All right. Now, let's grab this line that's right here. Let's grab this line, and let's copy it to the clipboard, because we're going to be able to use it again. We're just going to change that name. Does that make sense? All right, now highlight your whole nav section. So I'm just going to keep the comment in there that just says navigation. And now I want to change this to navbar, which is what we call that. Now you might want to put in a little bit of white space here. That's totally up to you. It's an individual call. But already you can see how much the size of the file has gone down. All right. Questions? Everybody understand what we're doing? All right. Everybody got it. Then I'm going to go down all the way to my footer section, and I'm going to grab everything after the footer comment, and I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to again paste this in, and now this will be footer. Like that. And then finally, where we've got these comments here that say Bootstrap Core, JS, etc., I don't even need those comments really, but I can put one in if I want to, but I'm going to grab this. Everybody see this? I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to paste in here scripts. And if you want, you can put in a comment there. It really doesn't matter one way or the other, like that. But hopefully you can see we've cut the size of the file down substantially. Plus now we have one focal point where we're going to be putting all this stuff. Does all that make sense to everyone? All right. So we've got, right now, that one's done. So our header is done. I'm sorry, our index.ejs file is done. So I'm going to do a file save. And now I'm going to go in and change the other ones. So I'm going to go over to About, Next, and start making the same changes. You've already seen this. So I've now got my header in About. And I'm going to put in my navbar. And I'm going to put in my footer, etc. I don't want to just sit there and keep yakking. And then go in and make the same exact changes in the other two files. So in the contact file and in the post, contact.ejs and post.ejs. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Now, if you look up on the screen here, please, the file we have right now for contact is a little different. See this? Because we've got this file that's in here. This is only in here. It says to activate the form. Don't remove that file. All right, so I'm only going to replace up to here. All right, let's go back now and take a look at the Navbar Ejs file. Okay. Now, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to put this thing here on multiple lines because I just want to be able to see everything that's in here. If you agree and you want to, do it. If you don't, don't. Hopefully, taking a look in here, you can see what the problem is. We don't have any more .html files. All right? Now, we still want this to say home, about, sample, post, and contact. That's fine. But for now, we should be able to change these. This should be just a slash. And I think I'm giving you the right path. We're going to find out real fast. This should be slash about. This should be slash post. And this should be slash contact. Now, I don't think it needs a slash at the end, and of course I didn't write that down, but I think that's correct now. So home is just slash, about is slash about, sample post is slash post, and contact is slash contact. All right, make sure it's in the nav bar that you made those changes. So save. All right. Well, at least One of them was working.
I had that problem too. It's put an S at the end of slash
Ah,
posts.
it's not posts. Okay, thank you. All right, so this should be a pluralized. You're right. All right, so it's posts, because it's going to hold posts. When we work on an individual post, it'll be singular. All right, but that should be plural right there, so make sure it's posts. Thank you. You are correct, sir. So now let's check. Home gets us home, about, sample post, and contact. Now, you may not agree with this, but we've actually made some progress here. All right, we grabbed an existing template, we brought it in. After we brought it in, we set up our model view controller architecture. All right, and after we did that, we went in and we created a views folder. All right, and we created a layouts folder. And in layouts, we put in common code for 4 things: for our header, for our footer, for our navigation bar, and for the scripts. All right, so we've done all that, and it's still working. I mean, that's honestly, that's important, you know. Okay, so let's do one more thing, and then that'll be it for the period that we're going to do. And that is, let's go in and start to work on our models. All right, so we're going to keep this simple for right now, but then we'll go back and look at it some more later. All right, what do I mean? Well, under models here, okay, so now notice if I close my layouts folder, etc., and I start to close this stuff, it's looking at least a little bit more compact on my page here. You see what I'm talking about? All right, when I've got everything closed, it's looking a little nicer. All right? All right, so I want to go into my models folder here, and I'm going to create a new file. All right? And we'll call this blog post, because that's what it'll be. It's a post we're going to put in our blog, .js. Now remember, this is a model, and if you remember, in our models, we set up our schema. All right? So we're going to come in here, and we're going to put in about 10 lines or so. So const, we need mongoose. All right. And we're going to come in and say const schema, and that's going to be equal to mongoose. And notice if I put my dot in here and I type in a capital S, how it's even C schema in there, so the IntelliSense picks it up. All right. Now, like I said, for now we're going to keep this really, really simple. But it's going to give me a chance later to go back into some of the documentation for Mongoose and talk about some stuff we haven't talked about yet. All right, so for right now, I'm going to put const blog post schema. Hopefully you remember this because we've done it before. Equal new schema. All right. And we're going to make this simple. We're going to have just 2 things. Every blog is going to have 2 things. It's going to have a title, and it'll have a body. Does that make sense? Because really, when you look at it, if you look up on the screen here, if I go to sample post, well, that's not a good one. There we go. Eventually, we want all this stuff in there. But this is going to be our title. This is going to be our body. Now, eventually we'll modify this so we can say that the user who put it in and the date they put it in. We could go even as nuts as far as give the time that they put it in. We'll just put in the current date, whatever the date is that they put it in. Does that all make sense? But for now, we care about this and we care about this. We're not going to worry about that because that's a ways down the road. All right? So the reason I'm telling you that is this is going to be a simple schema. Now, we've done this before where you don't have to type this. I'm going to change it in a second. We've done stuff like this. We put in title, and then we have come in and said like required, etc., that kind of stuff. For now, we're not going to worry about any of that stuff. We're just going to say it's got a title, which is a string, and it's got a body, which is a string. That's going to be basically, that's going to be our schema. Again, we can always go back in and modify that later. Not only can we will go back in and we will modify that later. All right? So, 2 more lines we've got to put in here. One is we have to say const blog post equal mongoose dot model blog post, I guess, because that's what we called it, so blog post. And the name of our schema, which is blog post schema. Okay. And something that we're going to talk about a little bit more fairly soon, okay, and that is we're going to come in then and we're going to just say module dot exports equal blog post. All right. Let's just break this file down, okay, just from the start. Again, it's a models file, so someplace in a models file, you're going to have a schema. I'm taking for granted that everybody gets that. All right, so let's look at the rest of it. In order for this to work, as it says, we have to include mongoose. After we include mongoose, basically, this schema that's right there is this. We're telling it that we're creating a mongoose schema. We are naming it this. This is totally up to us. We can name that anything we want to name it. This is totally up to us, and so does that. We can name them anything we want. All right? Now, we named it blog post because, the name of our model is blog post. It seemed to make sense to do that. Later, we're going to create, not now, but in a few days, we're going to create another file in here that's going to be called user.js. All right, and it'll be a user. And it'll have, maybe first name, last name, password, or just name and password, etc. That kind of stuff. All right, then we come in here and we're basically, Mongoose has got a thing with a model. So this is doing some association. All right, it says when we refer to this, well, we're referring to the blog post model, all right, and the blog post schema that's in that blog post model. And then by exporting it, we will end up, for lack of better words, importing it into the file that needs it, all right, so it's able to use it and do something with it. All right? Now, what we want to do, we're only going to do 1 or 2 more things today, but I'm going to go back to my server here, my server.js file, and after I've got all these routes, these routes work now, all right? And again, it's going to be your responsibility at a later time to pull all these routes out, put them in your controllers folder. Now, when you do that, there's 2 ways that you can do it. There's a good way and a not so good way. The not so good way is you're going to have a lot of routes. Just take my word for it. You're probably going to have about upwards of 20 routes. If you put all of those into a controller in one file, you can get it to work. But you haven't really seen a lot of value in doing that because it would be then why don't you just leave them in here if you're going to put them all together like that. But you can take each route and put it in its own file if you want to. And that's what we're going to get to in a couple days. All right? But in here, well, I want to be able to use this, right? So after I've got my Mongoose Connect, I'll just put it right here. I don't think it's going to matter much where we put it. But I'm going to say const blog post equals require, and I have to tell it where it lives, /models/blog post. Now, anything that we just defined in that blog post model is now available in this file. Does that make sense to everybody? What I'm trying to do, because I don't think I've done that great a job of it, is to connect the dots a little bit. So that's why I'm taking this very slow. Because I want to make sure as we go through this, it makes sense to you. All right? Any questions on anything we've done today? I've got, I've got a little more. I'm not going to go any further today. If there are no questions, you get the rest of the period to keep working on whatever it is. Your Mongo REST API, if you haven't finished the MySQL I'm going to grade that one tomorrow. My morning class has got a lab. So I'm going to look at everybody's MySQL REST API, and I'm going to try to grade those tomorrow. All right? And the other one, the Mongoose one, or Mongo one, whatever you want to call it, that's due next week, a week from now. All right? Questions on anything? Does what we did today make sense? All right. And again, until you start seeing the stuff and it really starts coming together, it might not totally make sense. And I get that. All right. So we'll pick it up here tomorrow morning. Make sure you do a file save all or file save. In fact, let's do one more thing, if you don't mind. And that is, let's go. We went out and we made a thing out on GitHub that we call blog, correct? Well, then why don't we take what we've done so far and let's push that. So let's go in, and I'm going to open up another Git bash window right here, and you know the drill. So the git add dot, just to make this full screen here. And see, there's a lot of junk. I got a lot more than I usually do. So there, yeah, that's fine. So I did the git add dot. All right. Git commit -m, and this literally is our initial commit. Some people like to put in there, for example, instead of initial commit, like commit 1. The problem with doing that is if you get put into that. So let's say you've got 500 commits. Now, how do you know the difference between commit 236 and 135, except the numbers are different? So what I'm going to ask is, as you start working through this, really start concentrating on giving it a good message. You know, the initial commit is fine for now, but whatever we do tomorrow, try to put at least some of that into your commit message. All right? Okay. So there's that. And I'm going to see if I can push it. So git push -u origin. I use master. Whenever it starts doing that kind of stuff, I'm always feeling good. I mean, if yours turns red, you know, something's wrong. All right, finally, I'm going to go out to my GitHub account here. And I'm going to find the one that we just created, which was blog. It's not finding it, but it's not finding it. There it is. And now I've got that stuff in there. And hopefully you have the same. All right? That's it for today then. You want to take a break for 15 minutes or whatever, totally cool. Again, I'll tell you this, you probably don't care. It's no biggie one way or the other for